Think about the last person you really believed, not agreed with, believed. There's a difference. Agreement is intellectual. Belief is something that happens before you've had a chance to think. It happens in the first 2 seconds of hearing someone speak, before the words have meaning, before the argument has structure. Something in the sound itself tells you this person is telling the truth, or it doesn't. And here's the strange part. The voice that tends to trip that wire, the one that gets past your defenses before your brain has time to raise them, doesn't sound confident. It sounds tired. Not broken, not defeated, just slightly worn, like someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has run out of reasons to pretend otherwise. You know that voice. You've trusted it without knowing why. The question is what's actually happening when you do. The conventional wisdom on trust and voice is simple and feels obviously correct. Confidence signals competence, and competence earns trust. This is backed by real research. A 2015 study out of McGill University found that when the same information was delivered in a confident tone versus a doubtful one, listeners rated the confident speaker as more credible, more knowledgeable, more worth listening to. This is not a small effect. It's large and consistent, and it replicates. Confident voices move faster through the world. They get believed first and questioned later, if ever. Politicians know this. Salespeople know this. Anyone who has ever had to convince a room of people of anything has felt the pull of it, the way certainty in your own voice creates certainty in others. So the research is clear. Confidence wins, except that this is only half the picture. And the half that's missing is the more interesting one. Here is what the confidence research doesn't quite capture. Confident voices are trusted more on average, but they are also disbelieved more dramatically when they're wrong. There's a liability built into sounding certain. When a confident voice fails you, when the thing it promised doesn't materialize, the trust doesn't just drop. It collapses. Retroactively. You feel manipulated, even if no manipulation was intended. Confidence, it turns out, is a loan taken out against future credibility. And the interest rate is brutal. Now contrast that with the voice that sounds slightly tired, slightly uncertain, slightly like it has already considered the ways it might be wrong before it opened its mouth. That voice carries a different signal entirely. Psychologists studying vocal authenticity have a term for what listeners are actually detecting: low performance cues. A voice that sounds effortful, that has texture, hesitation, the faint roughness of someone who has been talking or thinking for a long time, registers unconsciously as unmanaged, unpolished. And unpolished means the speaker probably isn't performing. And if they aren't performing, maybe they're not lying either. This is the logic your nervous system runs before your conscious mind has weighed in. It's not rational, but it's not irrational either. It's a heuristic, a very old one. Humans have been reading voices for a very long time. Longer than language, almost certainly. The acoustic features that register as trustworthy, warmth, slight roughness, measured pace, a certain heaviness in the lower register, are not arbitrary preferences that culture invented. They map onto something much older. In social species, a voice that sounds too clean, too controlled, too relentlessly upbeat is a warning signal. It means the speaker is managing their presentation. And a speaker managing their presentation is a speaker with a reason to manage it. That reason is not always deception, but sometimes it is. And your ancestors who assumed it sometimes was lived longer than the ones who didn't. This is the evolutionary logic. Exhaustion is costly to fake. A genuinely tired voice is tired because the person has been doing something, thinking something, surviving something. Performing tiredness requires effort, and sustained performance of anything requires more cognitive load than most casual interactions can sustain. So when you hear someone who sounds genuinely worn, not performed weariness, not calculated vulnerability, some part of your threat detection hardware relaxes. It decides, this one isn't running a play. The catch is that this heuristic, like all heuristics, can be exploited, which is where things get uncomfortable. Once you understand the mechanism, you start noticing it everywhere. The politician who speaks slowly, with long pauses, like someone choosing words with genuine difficulty, not because they're struggling, but because they've learned that struggle reads as honesty. The therapist voice. The late-night radio voice. The CEO who gives an interview looking slightly disheveled and says, quietly, that they're not sure they have all the answers. These are not accidents. The performance of non-performance is one of the more elegant tricks in the human social toolkit, and AI voices have made this stranger still. Early synthetic voices were too smooth, too even, too consistently clear in ways no human voice ever is. People clocked them immediately, not because they sounded robotic, but because they sounded unexhausted. The fix, and this is actually what voice AI developers discovered, wasn't to make them more articulate, it was to make them slightly worse. Add a little unevenness. Let the pitch drift occasionally. Introduce micro-hesitations. Make the voice sound like it's been carrying something. Trust followed almost immediately. We have now reached the point where authenticity is a design parameter, which does raise the question of what authenticity was in the first place. So here's where we end up, not with a clean answer, but with a cleaner version of the question. The voice you trust most isn't confident. It's the voice that sounds like it has already paid a price to be standing there, like it earned its own conclusions through something other than performance. And you can't fully fake that, not forever, not without eventually making yourself tired in the process, which would make it real. Maybe that's the actual signal, not the tiredness itself. But the fact that real tiredness and performed tiredness eventually converge. The person performing exhaustion long enough becomes exhausted. The person sustaining a confident front eventually cracks it just enough for the truth to show through. All of it, eventually, becomes genuine. The voice you trust isn't the one that sounds like it has nothing to hide. It's the one that sounds like hiding things has cost it something. Whether that's actually true is a separate question. One you'll probably never be able to answer, but you'll keep trusting the voice anyway. You always do.